Episode 11, Dragonheart. After that night with the Alpha, Iris was down with a fever for more than a week. She was barely conscious when she was fed and drank her medicine, but her fever didn't break until the 5th day, and after that she could only stay in bed. Hearing Hannah weep for her as she cursed the Alpha under her breath to make her Missy go through hell. But then, if the Alpha really wanted to take his revenge on Iris by using the same method Alpha Gerald had used on him, Iris wouldn't be here. She would have been thrown to the savages and left to be feasted upon, or maybe got her private parts scalded with boiling oil, like her father had done to Alpha Cain. Yes, her father had ruined Cain's private part, and they laughed about it. Hannah was not there, but she heard a very disturbing story about the event. Alpha Cain was only an inch away from death, while the other 5 Alphas watched it. And it didn't happen only once. They treated it as an amusement for them. If Cain was not a direct descendant from an Alpha, or he was only a mere shifter, he wouldn't have survived such torture.
Hannah, water.
Iris's voice cracked. She woke up early because she felt thirsty. Her throat was so dry, and her lips were chapped. During this week, the Alpha didn't bother her at all. There was no message from the Alpha that he needed her to pleasure him either. Everything was so quiet.
Here, miss, drink this.
Hannah brought a cup of water to her lips when she heard her whimpering. Tears welled up in her eyes to see her condition right now. Meanwhile, out there, the sky had turned so bright. It was almost noon when Iris woke up, though she lost track of time by now.
Do you want more?
Hannah asked attentively. She wiped water from her lips and laid her down on the bed again. This bed was not as comfortable as the bed that she used to sleep in, but this was better than the dungeon. Iris blinked her eyes. She fought back the urge to fall asleep again. Usually she wouldn't have the strength to stay awake for long, but this time she forced herself to open her eyes and looked at Hannah, who was sitting on the floor next to her bed while holding on to her hand.
Thank you,
Iris said. Her voice was so small. Hannah needed to lean close to her to catch what she was saying.
You don't need to thank me, miss. I can't do anything to save you.
She felt helpless when she saw Iris returned in the arms of the guards, bleeding and unconscious. She didn't know what kind of torture that she had gone through, but looking from her condition, she could tell what it was. Hannah tried to find a healer to treat her, but despite doing her job, she didn't care much about Iris, the nefarious Alpha's daughter. As long as Iris didn't die, she was not willing to do more than that. All the people despised her for what her father had done to them, even though Iris was not part of any of those malicious activities. Iris had never hurt them in any form when all she did was stay inside her room, since her father would be angry if she roamed around the place and met other people.
Miss, they shouldn't have treated you like this,
Hannah whimpered. She looked Iris right in the eyes as she held her hands even tighter, as if she was afraid that she would slip away from her.
This is not fair for you. They are directing their anger wrongly.
Iris blinked her eyes. She stared at her maid with an unfathomable gaze.
What my father's done to them wasn't fair either. That's how this world works.
The beating that she received from her brother was not fair. The way her father showed her contempt because she was born as a runt was not fair either. However, what could they do? Talking about it wouldn't make things any different. No one would believe her. It was her words against them. There was no need to make a fuss over this.
Hannah, I need something.
Iris bit her lip. She looked hesitant to say this.
Yes? Tell me what you need. I will get it for you.
Hannah's eyes slightly lit up, because Iris had rarely asked for anything.
Do you want food? Is there some food that you want? I'll get it for you.
It would be difficult, but it was not impossible. She knew a lot of people in the kitchen. After all, she was only a servant, just like them. What the higher-ranking people did or how the power struggle went wouldn't make them live better.
No.
Iris said. She was getting sleepy now. She felt her eyelids droop.
I want some tea. That tea.
What tea, miss?
Hannah came closer because her voice was getting smaller and smaller.
Dragonheart tea.
Hannah's face blanched. She gritted her teeth and then nodded. Tears rolled down her face.
I will get it for you. You need to rest now and you can get it once you wake up, okay?
Iris nodded and closed her eyes. Dragonheart sleeves were effective in preventing pregnancy. Iris was not so naive to not know about this. She didn't want to bear Cain's child. She didn't want to get pregnant by him in this situation. She didn't know what he had done to her that night after she fell unconscious because the agony was too much. The pain wrecked her insides, and no matter how many times Hannah wiped her to clean her body, she would never feel clean. Was this how those people in the Howling Wolf Pack felt when they were turned into slaves? This feeling was so awful. They didn't deserve this. Neither did she.
Sleep, young miss. I will be here.
Hannah whispered into her ear as she caressed her cheek. Episode 12. You can do as you please.
You look so tired.
Aria said as she entered Cain's study room. She was holding a tray.
I brought you snacks and tea. You need to rest, my Alpha.
Aria looked so beautiful in her white dress. She looked almost like a high-ranking shifter in the pack, even though she was born as a slave. Because she was the only woman that was beside Cain for the last 3 years, people respected her as Cain's woman. Some people even went as far as saying that she would be the future Luna of the pack, and in Aria's mind, she was thinking the same. Alpha Cain's mate had died along with their firstborn, and the chances of him getting a second chance mate were so slim. Finding a second chance mate was akin to a miracle. It was so rare, but was not unheard of. However, they needed to stabilize their pack soon, and having a Luna would reassure people that the Alpha wouldn't leave the position empty forever. It would also secure the bloodline.
Thank you, Aria.
Cain said, without lifting his head from the documents in front of him. All of those were petitions for him not to merge the two packs together, because it would disrupt the power balance in this continent, which seemed laughable to Cain. They didn't mind it when it was his pack that was being swallowed by the Blue Moon pack, but now they were making a fuss when he did exactly the same thing.
This tea will help you. You will have a good rest.
Aria started to brew the tea leaves.
I will never have a good rest.
Cain didn't shift his focus from writing the answer for those ridiculous petitions. He really wanted to add some curses in his writing, instead of talking formally to them. But in his current condition, his people couldn't afford to go to another war. The coup had taken many great warriors from both sides. Many people had died for him to sit in this position.
Here, drink this first.
Aria took the paper from his hands and handed him a cup of tea.
Take a 5-minute break. You need it.
Aria then walked behind him and started to massage his stiff shoulders. She helped him to relax, while Cain drank his tea. She learned this from her slavery days, when Gerald's mistresses would treat him like he was some kind of god. She remembered how pleased he was, and she wanted Cain to feel the same.
You have done so well, my Alpha. You have been so busy these days.
Aria started. Her fingers skillfully put some pressure in the right spots and made Cain feel a little bit relaxed. He soon put the teacup down and just closed his eyes. He had not slept for 2 days straight, but this was nothing to him. He had gone through hell before this.
Alpha, I heard that woman has woken up.
Aria stated, and Cain knew exactly what she wanted, even when she just started speaking.
The servants feel restless because she takes days to recover and stays in the servants' room instead of the dungeon. After all, she is supposed to be a captive of war. She should be no higher than a slave. But you are very lenient to her.
Aria felt bitter when she heard that Cain spent the night with Iris, but when she saw the aftermath, she was quite satisfied. Their Alpha had exacted their revenge and was not swayed by compassion.
When will you torture her again?
All the high-ranking shifters of Alpha Gerald's reign had been turned into slaves for those who managed to survive the coup, which extended to their families as well. And now, they were working in the mines.
She is a runt. She will not last long if we torture her very often.
Cain didn't open his eyes. He was grateful for the massage, but this kind of conversation gave him a headache. He thirsted for revenge and tortured those people that had brutalized him and his people. But aside from that, there was another important thing that he had to do first, which was strengthen his new reign. There was no guarantee if they would be attacked, or there was a mud or two that managed to escape from this place and gathered strength out there. Their position was still risky.
If you treat her gently, people will start to talk.
Cain wanted to end this conversation. The nice massage was not worth adding to his headache.
What do you want?
Why don't you make her work in the mines?
Aria suggested. The runt would die miserably if she worked there. Cain was silent for a while before he spoke curtly.
You can do as you please.
A bright smile curled on the corners of Aria's lips. She wanted to kiss him, but she knew that he hated it. During the years that they had been together, he had never allowed her to kiss him, not even a small peck on his cheek.
Thank you.
Aria was all smiles. It took a total of 10 days for Iris to feel better and finally managed to get up from her bed. She looked a little bit pale, but she had always been like that. She was wearing a long-sleeved dress that looked shabby on her and humbled her appearance, but wasn't able to hide her beauty.
Miss,
Hannah called her as she nudged her hand. She was staring out the window. It was a rainy day, and the gloomy sky almost felt like a perfect picture of what she was feeling right now.
Yes?
Iris turned her head and looked at Hannah, who was smiling. But what she would say was not something that could be called as good news. She could tell from her eyes.
the Alpha's mistress wants to see you.
Hannah said as she moved uneasily.
She wants to see you now.
Aria. Iris had met her before. Episode 13. Work in the Mines. Aria. She was a slave. Born as a slave. That was why she didn't have a last name. Because just like any other slave, they didn't need that, since their status was even lower than the Omegas in the pack. But now, she became an important figure once the Howling Wolf Pack managed to free themselves from the slavery. All of this was thanks to her relationship with the Alpha. People respected her for her loyalty toward the Alpha and how close they were for the last 3 years. There was even a rumor that said that Aria was the woman who encouraged the Alpha for the coup, but that was simply too far-fetched. After all, it was only a rumor. Aria stood haughtily in front of Iris. She lifted her chin as if she came from a royal family, looking down on her subject. She was full of herself right now.
Iris.
Aria said her name with so much malice in her voice, as if a layer of venom spread over the tip of her tongue when she breathed out her name. Iris raised her head, only to receive a harsh slap across her face. She fell to the floor because her body was still recovering, and she was too weak for another round of torture. Iris screamed in pain when her hair was yanked by Aria. She felt as if her hair was being pulled from her scalp. Aria forced Iris to look at her, and there she saw a deep hatred in her eyes. She would kill her if she got a chance.
How was your night with the Alpha? Was it fun?
The mention of it made Iris shudder. She didn't want to remember the pain that coursed through her body, as if someone cut her body in half. Also the humiliation. Iris whimpered, but she tried to not make any more sounds. She was already used to this pain. Even before these people were forced into slavery, she already endured such torture from her brother, while her father would always turn a blind eye to it. She was a failure in his bloodline, after all. A runt like her didn't hold so much value, because her value lay in the fact that she was the Alpha's only daughter.
It is such a pity you were so weak that you were born as a fucking runt, so we need to be careful not to kill you. Death is a very easy way out for you, and I don't want to make your life easy after what your fucking father had done to us.
And another harsh slap landed on Iris's face. She tasted blood when her lip got cut, and her cheeks bled because Aria's long nails grazed her skin. The Alpha's mistress kicked her stomach a few times, as if to make sure that she wouldn't carry the Alpha's child. In Aria's mind, she did Cain a favor, since he wouldn't want to have his firstborn child from his enemy's daughter. After she let out a fraction of her hatred toward Iris, she called two women. They were standing on the side during the onslaught.
Take her to the mines and make her work from sunrise until sunset.
Aria said in an authoritative voice. She looked down on Iris.
This is an order from the Alpha.
The two women gladly took Iris to the mines upon hearing this was the Alpha's order, though they needed to half drag her away from there because she couldn't support herself for a while. "Stand up!" Dahlia, the girl with blonde hair, shouted at her. She was a slave in the Howling Wolf Pack, but her nightmares started when she became a slave in the Blue Moon Pack. It was Aria who took care of her, and a few other women that she could take care of, since they only had each other at that time. And now, when they were already free, she pledged her loyalty to Aria, just like other women. After all, they believed Aria would be their Luna one day, since the Alpha had no other woman besides her. Meanwhile, the girl with black hair named Bian looked at Iris, but didn't say anything. She propped her on her shoulder, waited for her to be able to stand on her own, and then walked towards the mines, where the pack members of the Blue Moon Pack gathered and worked until the day they died, just like what they had done to them. "Here, wear this." Bian gave Iris a shabby dress in the color of brown. It looked so dirty, and there was a stain of blood in one of its corners. They didn't even bother to wash the dress, as they would just fold the dress when the slave died and give it to the next one. Just how many owners of that dress had died? Whose blood was that? However, all of that was not important to Iris now. There was nothing she could do to refuse it. Silently, Iris took the dress.
Where can I get changed?
She asked Bian. She looked a little bit nicer than Dahlia, who openly showed her hatred. "You need to change here." Bian's tone was almost apologetic when she spoke, but then she cleared her throat and all the pity that came over her a moment ago vanished into thin air.
Here?
Iris looked around her surroundings. This was the first time she went to the mines, and especially to such a huge room. This room was akin to a hall, but a little bit smaller than that. where there were many lockers to store each slave's dress and a few belongings they had. There was no privacy here, as they had to change their dresses into their uniforms and go immediately to the mines before the slave trainer whipped them because they were late. Iris balled her fists tightly. The dress felt so rough in her hands. The fabric was made of the worst material.
Okay.
Iris said as she started to undress herself. Episode 14. We need to get rid of them. There were only Bian and two more girls, a little bit older than Iris, who changed their dresses and then immediately went out of this room. Iris put on the dress, and it felt like she was wearing a rug, but she didn't complain about it and folded her earlier dress to put it into the locker.
You can only leave the site after the sunset and only if the slave trainer allows you.
Bian glanced at Iris briefly. She looked so calm for someone who knew what kind of fate that was waiting for her.
And if he didn't allow you to go, you have to keep working. Do you understand?
Yes.
Iris replied briefly. Once they were outside, they met with Dahlia. She had been waiting for them and looked impatient. Her sharp eyes stared at Iris, but she simply looked somewhere else. It was not a new thing for Iris to be treated this way. Therefore, she knew the rule that she couldn't look them directly in their eyes, since it could be interpreted as a confrontation. Someone of lower rank shouldn't look the upper-ranking shifters in their eyes for long. It was disrespectful.
Here.
Dahlia shoved a shovel into her hand. This small shovel was only the size of Iris' palm.
Use this and start digging. He will tell you what to do.
Iris turned her attention to the man beside Dahlia. He was so big and tall, probably as big as the Alpha, though Cain was taller. His demeanor was so intimidating, which worked for his job as a slave trainer.
Is she that nefarious Alpha's daughter?
The man's voice was full of resentment.
Yes, she is. She is a runt, so probably she will not be much help.
Dahlia smirked. It seemed she was happy to see how the slave trainer was repulsed by the sight of Iris.
Oh, I forgot to tell you something.
Dahlia then pinched Iris's chin and lifted her head up.
You need to make sure that she looks at you when you talk.
Stone gave her a questioning look.
She has difficulty with hearing.
Dahlia informed him.
But she can read lips. That's why you need to make her look at you when you want to talk to her.
This was a humiliation that Iris always got from her brother and the other girls around her age. Though she was the Alpha's daughter, with her condition and character, they used to mock her, knowing that no one would stand up for her.
We should have crushed her head with a stone rather than let her live and breathe the same air as us.
Easy, Stone. The Alpha wants her to live. Death is too easy for her.
Dahlia patted the man named Stone on his shoulder as if to calm him down.
Yeah, but accidents happen in the mines every day, right?
Stone spoke so callously.
You are right about that,
Dahlia said in a cheeky voice. Her eyes couldn't hide her hatred.
You don't need to worry. This is the Alpha's order. He wants this run to be here.
Oh, that's great.
Iris could feel a chill run down her spine when she read the way they talked about her, but she kept her mouth shut and showed no expression. Mason always said that her face was annoying. She shifted her attention to the barren land before her eyes and breathed raggedly. This was the first time she was here. Hannah always said that working in the mines was akin to hell. Now she seemed to know why. There was no shady area, which meant you would be directly exposed to the bright sun above your head, and this could make you dizzy and dehydrated. Let alone working, even standing there in this kind of condition would be so hard. Iris was staring at the vast, barren land before her eyes and flinched when Stone pinched her chin and directed her eyes at him. He looked terrifying, and the resentment in his eyes was very palpable. He used it as a cloak around him.
Put this on.
He raised his hand and showed an anklet to Iris before he threw it on the ground.
And follow me.
Iris immediately recognized the anklet. They used this to keep track of the slaves, just in case they would run away. It gave off a certain scent that was easy for the hunters of the pack to track them down. Without questioning anything, Iris put it on her left ankle and followed Stone. She ignored what Dahlia was saying, not putting any effort to read her lips, since it wouldn't help and only hurt her more.
The king will come in a month.
Jace said as he read a message that just arrived this morning, informing them that the king would grace him with his presence, which was bullshit. The king only wanted to make sure that Cain wouldn't go with his plan to merge the two packs together.
Distant nephew?
Jace scoffed.
Now he wants to play the family card with you.
The beta read the last few words and immediately felt repulsed by how shameless this Alpha King was. He didn't address himself as King Aeon of the Ogregon Kingdom, but he called himself as Cain's distant relative, his uncle.
I feel like I want to vomit.
Jace mumbled under his breath. King Aeon was the illegitimate son of Cain's mother's father, and he managed to be crowned as the king after he got rid of all the other eligible candidates. It was kind of a bloody event at that time, but it was not unusual for some power struggle in the court.
Will you receive him here?
Jace put down the paper and then directed his attention toward his alpha.
The pack house in the Howling Wolf Pack wouldn't be ready by that time.
Cain said.
I think we need to get rid of Gerald's children before he comes. I feel like he has a hidden agenda with his visit.
Episode 15. I Will Make You Feel Good. Cain's mother, Crystal, was the firstborn of the previous king. But because she chose to step down from the royal battle for the throne and married her mate, the alpha of the Howling Wolf Pack, she managed to escape the massacre at that time. However, when the Howling Wolf Pack fell into slavery, not even once the king interfered or helped them in any possible way. They let the slavery of his own uncle's pack stretch for more than 10 years before Cain could gather power and manage a coup against Alpha Gerald. He won the battle, but it didn't mean they could breathe in relief yet, since they were still in a predicament.
I think we need to get rid of Gerald's children before he comes. I feel like he has a hidden agenda with his visit.
Jace said. Of course the king did. What else was the reason he suddenly wanted to visit this pack if he didn't?
Do you have any idea why he wants to visit now?
It was only a little over a month ago they managed to trample Alpha Gerald's reign, and it was still a pretty heated situation at this moment.
No.
The answer was very curt, but Jace was used to this, since Cain was not fond of talking much, though there were a lot of things in his mind.
We will figure it out when he is here.
What would you do if he disagreed to merge the two packs? Will you let go of the Blue Moon Pack?
Jace was a little bit riled up.
If there is no way, we have to do what is best for our people.
If they let go of the Blue Moon Pack, it meant they had to let go of the pack members as well. They didn't mind those who weren't involved with the torture of the slaves, but for the higher-ranking ones, if they had to let them go as well, it would be something huge for them. Because those people were the people who had tortured them for a decade, and now when they finally had the chance to exact their vengeance, they had to let them go? What bullshit!
If we have to hand over this pack, it will be better to hand the king a pack full of corpses. I would love to behead them all.
Jace indicated those higher-ranking ones from the Blue Moon Pack to be killed, rather than to see them restore their glory.
That will anger the king.
Cain said simply.
So, what? That bastard king didn't even help us at all when the Blue Moon Pack enslaved us, but now he wants to interfere.
Jace was furious. He felt it was unfair and he had never liked the king to begin with.
And then risk our people going to another war?
Cain shifted his attention toward his beta. He was standing near his desk, putting down the document in his hand.
Do you really think we can afford another war? And what then? We lose the war and become slaves again?
Jace was silent. He knew that they couldn't afford it now, let alone a war with the king. Even a war with any one of the other packs was too much for them now. They lost so many people, and the warriors from the Blue Moon Pack were not willing to pledge their loyalty to Cain. Currently, they were working in the mines now. The tension was so high, and, of course, if the beta was so concerned about this matter, the alpha was put under a lot more pressure about this. Right at that time, someone knocked on the door twice and then entered the room without getting any permission. But they knew who it was. It was only her who would do such a thing. Aria waltzed into the room with a tray of teaware in her hands. She smiled at Jace and greeted him cheerfully.
I brought you chamomile tea. I heard this will help you with sleep.
Aria went to put the tray on the desk and started brewing said tea. Seeing this, Jace resigned himself. He assumed the alpha needed private time with his woman. It was only Aria who had been in an intimate relationship with the alpha for the past 3 years. From the way the beta looked at it, it was only her who could offer a piece of comfort to Cain.
I don't think I will be able to sleep.
Cain said.
I have a lot of things to do.
Sleep had never come so easily to him in the last 10 years. He always had this nightmare where those people laughed at his pain and humiliation, while he couldn't do anything when his people suffered and were tortured right before his eyes.
My alpha, you need to relax.
Aria then strode toward him and put her arms around his neck, and she pressed her body so close to him.
I will make you feel good tonight.
Cain's face was devoid of any emotions.
It has been a while, right? You need to vent out your emotions.
Aria tiptoed, but Cain glared at her. She should know the rule that he wouldn't do anything affectionate with her, and he didn't like to be kissed. The gesture repulsed him. Their relationship was only based on carnal desire and comfort. For Cain, he started to do this with Aria because of only one reason. He needed her to vent out his desire. Cain had made things very clear since the very beginning. Because Cain didn't want to have any affectionate bond, Aria went straight to the business. She caressed his manhood and slipped her hand inside his pants as she felt his phallus. It felt so rough. The skin had been scalded countless times, and it was hard to please him.
Undress and go to the bed.
Cain pulled away her hand when he became hard from her touch. Hearing that, Aria went to bed happily. She stripped herself seductively when she walked there. With Cain, there were no playful things. He wanted to get down to the business immediately, but Aria didn't mind. Once she was naked, she laid down on her back on the bed. Her olive skin looked healthy now that she had people to take care of her and didn't need to stay covered in soot or having other men to have her. Aria moaned when the alpha's fingers caressed her intimate part to prepare her. since it would be painful.